Hi, my name is Teresa May. I'm the executive director of the Margaret Byrd Rawson Institute. Margaret and I set up the institute together in the year 2002. And I want to share my memory of the first time I met Margaret. I was a parent of two boys, and my oldest son was really having a hard time in school. And I was driving my youngest son to his preschool there off of Rosemont Avenue in Frederick, Maryland. And I was sitting at the light thinking, what am I going to do to help my oldest son, John Randall, to be able to read? I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't getting any answers. And I was at this light and I'm sitting there thinking what to do. And that inner voice that guides all of us mothers and parents within me said, to look for the woman that I had read a couple years prior about this woman. I couldn't even think of her name. And she was doing something with this word that I could barely read because I'm dyslexic, dyslexia. And I was thinking, I need to find that woman that was in the Washington Post article. So when I dropped my son off, I asked the woman at the front desk, her name was Pat at the time, did she know who that article was about that woman in Frederick that had something to do with children who couldn't read? And she looked at me, she goes, "Oh, Margaret Rawson? She was my teacher when I was at Hood College, and when my father was the president of Hood College." I had no idea that any of this. And she said, "Oh, let's look her up." So back then, she got out the phone book and looked her up, and we got her number. I called her right then and there, and Margaret answered the phone, and she said, "My secretary, Charlotte, isn't in today because I'm expecting a visitor, Tom West from, I believe she said from Canada, to come in. And if you can come here right now, I'm happy to meet with you." And I was like, okay. She was just about 4 or 5 miles from where my son went to preschool. So I drove over to her house, which is called Fox's Spy, this magical stucco home built in the early 1800s. Maybe it's even really the late 1700s. It's a very old home. And I walked, I parked my car near her barn and walked into the side door. Anyone who's been there will know what I mean. And she greeted me at the door, and I knew something. I just had this, I knew something big was happening in my life because it was magical going into her home. And I sat at the kitchen table. She had this beautiful, beautiful kitchen, just a magical place sitting in there. And I'll never forget, she said to me, she went like this. She had a pencil or pen from her table. She goes, "There's a key, but not many people hold that key that's going to help your son to learn to read." And she then began, she said, "I helped start a school in Baltimore, Genesee School. You need to go out there and see what this Orton Gillingham teaching is all about, because the key for him is going to be to learn phonetically." And my response to Margaret was, "We don't hear those sounds in my family," which is hysterical. Yeah, that was like, without giving a phonological test, I was saying we don't hear these sounds in my family. And I did go out and see the school, and Margaret became my mentor. And she changed the direction, the focus, the path of my life. And she was a blessing. And this amazing woman born in 1899, the most brilliant woman I have ever met, and the most grounded, kind, compassionate, smart woman I was able to be with every day for several years until she passed at the age of 102. and she was a blessing to me and my boys. And she taught me and really highlighted for me that a child only has one childhood. You only get one childhood, and that everything in that space of time matters in how you're taught, how you're treated, how you get to interact with life, and to make it a happy, positive time. As Dr. Hollowell says, the childhood roots of adult happiness, that we learn to be happy and ourselves, it's rooted in childhood. And Margaret was the best teacher I could ever have had.